Hey everyone, this is Joe Bunting from The Right Practice, which is the best place online to learn how to become a better creative writer. Today I want to show you how to use Freytag's Pyramid, which is one of the most popular story structure models out there. And to do that, we're going to be using Scapple, which is a really great tool by the creators of Scrivener. And if you're not familiar with Scrivener, if you're not using Scrivener, you should be. It really is the best creative writing tool out there, especially for those of you who are working on books. It's the best word processor for books. I'll include a link to my review of Scrivener in the show notes below. So let's jump into Freytag's Pyramid. So here I am in a new document. I'm going to use this to structure Romeo and Juliet based on Freytag's Pyramid. Freytag is a very commonly found dramatic structure. It was created by Gustav Freytag in 1863. It's used by all sorts of people. You can even get taught this in middle school. So it's one of the most common dramatic structures that they teach. It can be really helpful, especially as you're thinking about your midpoint and kind of the two halves of your story. So here I am in a new document, and this is going to be Romeo and Juliet, and we're going to start by putting some of the major plot points into this story based on Freytag's model in Freytag's Pyramid. It starts with the introduction. So I'm going to just double click and create a new note here for introduction. That'll be kind of a label. And if you're using this, you can right click this, you can move it around, you can make it different styles. So you can have, let's say this is a blue style. All right, then I'm going to just copy that so that I have all those styles. There's 5 parts to Freytag's Pyramid. So the first part is the introduction. Then you have the rising movement. Then you have the climax. And I want this to be red. Let's see if we can make this red. Yeah, perfect. Everything else, all these other labels are going to be blue. Then we have the falling action. And last, we have the catastrophe. All right, so Freytag's Pyramid has 5 different points. Let's see if we can create a line, connect all with an arrow. Just do this one at a time. All right. So we have our pyramid shape. Just going to move these around a little bit. Okay, cool. Now that we have our arrow, let's do this. Let's start to put in our plot points from Romeo and Juliet, okay? So here, we're just going to put individual notes from different plot points. Let's say the first scene is there's this rivalry between Montagues and Capulets. All right, meet important characters, Romeo and his posse, right? And then we also meet Juliet and her family, plus her nurse. All right, so there's a couple of things happening there in the introduction. Oh, by the way, there's one other major important part of Freytag's Pyramid, and it's called the exciting force. Other frameworks would call this a inciting incident. But the exciting force in Romeo and Juliet, according to Freytag, is Romeo and his posse decide to attend the Capulets' ball. Okay? So there's this big decision that we're going to attend the Capulets' ball. That's the exciting force. And let's just change that because I think that's a little bit special. Let's make it green. Now, let's talk about the rising movement. What happens in the rising movement? So according to Freytag, there are 4 stages to the rising movement. So starting with stage 1, there's this masked ball, okay? And that includes Juliet preparing for the ball, Romeo and his posse sneaking in to the ball, Tybalt discovers Romeo and his posse, Romeo sees Juliet and he's enraptured. They have their first conversation. Finally, Juliet debriefs that conversation with her nurse. So there's a lot going on in that first one. So we have the first stage, masked ball. Then stage 2 is the famous garden scene. Romeo sneaks into the garden, has this amazing conversation with Juliet. They decide they are meant to be. They're soulmates. They're going to make this thing happen no matter what the consequences. All right. Stage 3 is they get married. There's a marriage. It's happening. Stage 4 is Romeo's run-in with Tybalt, her cousin, Juliet's cousin, and he kills him. So Tybalt dies. There we go. 4 stages in the rising movement. So a lot is happening in those stages. By the way, one kind of cool thing about Scapple, especially if you use Scrivener, is that you can take these and you can export them straight into Scrivener as notes. So as you're plotting out your scene, as you're figuring out what your story is, and you're just kind of brainstorming here, you can move all this stuff around and then you can export it right into Scrivener and have it all ready to go for the drafting process, which is really convenient. So when I am drafting, when I am plotting out a story, a lot of times if I'm feeling like I can't outline it right on the page, I'll come over to Scapple and I'll start to map it out here, and it gives you a lot of freedom. It's kind of like a digital whiteboard that you can move things around and think more freely. All right, so let's talk about the climax. What happens in the climax? The big climactic moment, according to Freytag, and reminder here, Freytag doesn't have a climax as maybe we would understand it today. It's more of this midpoint scene. It's a turning point in the play where things either go from bad to good in a comedy or good to bad in a tragedy. So up until this point, things are going really well for Romeo. At the climax, they start going bad. And the climactic moment, according to Freytag, is that Juliet urges Romeo to flee. Romeo says goodbye. So the lovers separate. That is that climactic moment in this play. And you can kind of see here, you can resize these things. We can move all this stuff around just to make it fit better. So it gives you a lot of freedom in structuring this. You can move it however you want. All right, then there's the falling action. Romeo is in exile. Juliet is getting married. Her parents are forcing her to get engaged to Paris, I believe, which isn't good because she's already married, right? And then Friar Lawrence helps Juliet fake her death. And then Romeo discovers Juliet is dead. He buys some poison from an apothecary and runs back home to essentially commit suicide. That is the falling action. Interestingly, Freytag is much less interested in his book, Freytag's Technique for the Drama. He's much less interested in the falling action. He actually totally skips creating a section for the falling action. He's much more interested in the climax. There is one part of this, though, that he is very interested in. It's called the force of the final suspense. And this is when Romeo kills Paris in the graveyard. So Paris is sitting there keeping guard. Romeo faces him and kills him. And that's when Freytag would say, this is the foreshadowing of the final catastrophe. He's saying you have to give the reader some hints that, yes, everything is going to go badly. Just do a little bit of rearranging here. You can also make these align. There's a little align button, or you can distribute them. Let's distribute them, let's see, vertically. I think that would be right. There we go. And then we can align them by their centers. Cool. That's great. All right. So the final catastrophe, of course, is when Romeo commits suicide. Juliet wakes up to him dying. She commits suicide as well. That is the catastrophe. There's one more scene after the final catastrophe, and you could put this in green because this is a moment that he talks a lot about. But there's also another moment after the catastrophe where everyone discovers the couple. There's some fallout. Prince is pissed, right? And by the way, here you can scroll around on Scapple. You can make this as big as you want. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. You have so much freedom within this page to do whatever you want. There's a ton of formatting options. So Scapple makes it really easy to just kind of find your way around your structure. All right, and that's it. That is Freytags Pyramid, Romeo and Juliet, all done on Scapple. So if this is something that you would like access to, we have a link to Scapple in the description. This is a tool I personally use when I'm structuring my stories, and I think it could definitely help you with your own writing. There's a free trial as well, and I think it's only like $18. So it's a pretty good deal. I would definitely recommend it for your creative writing. And again, you can then go and put everything, all of these notes into Scrivener. You can import it, and they'll all become little cards. And then you can use those to write your story, which is really convenient. We're big fans of Scrivener here. So hopefully you find that helpful as you go to plot and diagram your story. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.